Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is the start of Series 3. As you may know, September 18th, my birthday. And what are we going to do? We're going to be making a shirt. A birthday shirt, so that I can go out on the town and maybe have a drink or two. This particular pattern you may have seen me use before. It is the pattern I used to make my 7 days, 7 shirts video. I'll leave a link up here. It combines two of my favorite shirt patterns. Kwik K3883 and McCall's M6044. I like elements of both, so I combine them to make a custom shirt pattern to fit me. You can do that with many of your own patterns at home. So, let's just get right into it. Stop. Wait. Let's talk about this. Lace. Some people hate it, but I love it. Men can wear lace. Why not? Why not indeed? So, for this shirt, the full back panel will be lace. So there. Let's move on. Since this is a garment I'm making, and it is cotton fabric, I'm going to pre-wash. Always pre-wash your fabric, when it's the appropriate fabric, when making a garment. You want to make sure that it's pre-shrunk, and then you won't have any issues of warping or going out of grain. You want to do that now, so you don't discover that after you sew everything together. Just going to pre-wash the fabric as you normally should. As I am using a plain black shirting, or lawn, I do not have to worry about pattern matching or there being a right or wrong side. I can just fold it in half, pin the pattern down, and start cutting. Since I am only doing the back of the shirt in lace, I'm only cutting the fronts, the sleeves, the yoke, the collar, and the collar band out of the black cotton fabric. The collar band and the collar itself I am cutting out of the same black fabric, but I have interfaced one side. The pattern normally calls for one piece of each, the collar and the collar band, to be interfaced, but I like to interface both. I like the extra stiffness in my collar and collar band. Here we have a close-up of the lace I am using. I didn't realize this when I bought the lace, but it is a corded lace, which means around each motif there's a small cord that has been sewn in. As you can see, I have the back piece of the pattern on the fold, as noted in the pattern itself. Now, this is corded lace. It is a little more difficult to cut through, so sharp scissors are essential. This shirt pattern has attached front plackets. This means the placket itself is attached and not a separate piece that you sew on later. There is, however, a small fold under that I need to do. Now, when anything calls for basting stitches or a fold under, I always use the seam allowance and stitch it down. This provides me a guide as shown here. See, I've taken the 3/8 seam allowance, stitched along there. This makes it easier, at least I find, to fold over. Also, in any pattern, don't forget your notches. See, the placket notches on this one indicate where you're folding. Now, as this is a fairly light fabric, I did use interfacing along that 3/8 seam there. As you can see here, a lightweight interfacing. This will give the placket more stiffness and more body for buttonholes. Once the interfacing is down, you can turn over at the notches, creating the front placket, and press. Press, 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 press. Once that's done, we can go over to our sewing machine and do a nice top stitch. I did a 1/8 of an inch top stitch, as you can see here, thus providing a lovely placket for this lightweight material. Naturally, once you do this to one side, you're going to want to do it to the other, so that it's nice, even, and symmetrical. Here we go, the collar. I always find collars slightly tricky, but patience is a virtue here. I'm starting by pinning the actual collar itself, not the collar band, the collar, right sides together, all the way along. Once I have sewn my 3/8 seam allowance on 3 of the 4 sides, I then clip the corners and do notches. Yes, I know this might seem weird on a collar. I just find it helps the collar sit a little better when you turn it right side out. And once turned right side out, press, and look at that, one collar. Now it's just top stitch all the way around that side. Now we have to attach the collar to the collar band. Matching up the notches, we're going to make a collar sandwich in some way. I always start with one side and then the other, matching the notches, and then graciously working the collar band to the curve of the collar itself, making sure that there are no ripples or wrinkles in any piece of the collar unit. Once everything is pinned, it's time to take it to the sewing machine and sew along the edge. And here we go. The collar band is now attached to the collar stand. Here I am clipping the corners, well, not really corners, the curve on the collar band. So that way, when I turn it right side out, it will lay nice and flat. Once turned, there we go. I take it to my iron, press everything really good, and we have a nice collar unit. The curve is good, everything is nicely pressed, and you can see it's a little stiffer because I like a little stiffer collar, and there you go. Time to add the yokes to the lace back panel. This was a little interesting because on lace you really can't put any notches, so I just sort of had to guess to make sure that it was going to work out well. Here we are making a lace sandwich with the 2 yokes. Once you've got that all pinned down, you're taking it to your sewing machine and sewing at the seam allowance. And here you go, a nice yoke attached to the back panel. Now it's time to attach the front 2 panels to the back panel using the glorious burrito technique. I don't know if that's trademarked. I just really want a burrito right now. Look at that lovely burrito there. Making sure to pin the side seams of the yokes properly together, encasing the lace back panel and the front panels to give us that burrito effect. And now we're going to go take this to the sewing machine and sew. This technique will encase all your raw edges, making it nice and neat on the inside. Once you have that all done, here we go. Now we're just going to top stitch along there, along the shoulder, making sure the top stitching is in the back half. Now, if you know me, I hate setting in sleeves. It is the most time-consuming thing I think possible. But I just have to go slow. This was interesting because I was setting seams into half lace and half knot. Now, because this sleeve is sewn to a half lace back shirt, there is nowhere for that seam to hide. And normally on a shirt you would top stitch that seam down. But what did I do? I took it to my serger. Ooh, gotta remove the tailor's tacks there. I took it to my serger and just serged it down. And I'm not gonna stitch it down because I don't want to see that edge or that seam through the lace. Again, I am not top stitching that seam down as I normally would with a full regular shirt. Now that both sleeves are in, it's time to do the full side seams, making sure to line up any notches you have, going from the sleeve all the way down to the bottom hem. Now again, this is lace, so pinning can be a little difficult, and therefore sewing might be a little challenging because corded lace may not agree with your machine. Now here we have the same problem as the sleeve. We don't want to see that seam coming through the lace. So what are we going to do? I'm going to take this to my serger and just serge it. Therefore, there will be no need to top stitch the seam down whatsoever. And here you go, one serge seam from the undersleeve all the way to the bottom hem. This gives it a nice clean look. Now it's time to pin the collar to the actual bodice itself. Here I am, slowly pinning from corner to corner, making sure I have no ripples. I hate ripples in the collar, so I use a lot of pins, and it takes time. So this is what it looks like. This is what I take to my sewing machine. But because I took the time to pin everything down nicely, this is the result I have. Nice, clean, no ripples, nothing. Now it's time to fold over the front edge to create the full collar band look. Again, you might notice that I have some stitching there to show me exactly where I'm folding under. And as you can see here, I've pinned. Now I'm repinning along the original seam line to get the collar sewn down to make the nice finished inside edge. Once everything's pinned down, I take it to my sewing machine, and this is what I have. All nicely top stitched. The collar is now attached to the shirt in a beautiful way with lovely 1/8 top stitching. Now it's time to do some hems on sleeves and the bottom. On the sleeves, I always fold over and then fold over again. As you can see here, again a 3/8 pre-done stitch. Then I fold that and then fold it over and then just pin and sew along that. That encases the raw edges. Now I've done that on the bottom and on the sleeves to give a nice finished edge. Now, as this is a self-drafted pattern, there are no buttonhole guides. But I've guessed from other shirts that you start off from the very top button along the collar, and then it's 3 inches down from that, and then from that button it's every 3.5 inches all the way down the shirt. As I am using a straight stitch machine, this is my buttonholer. This creates my straight stitch machine into a buttonhole machine. Yes, it is a beast. Lining up the chalk markings with the buttonhole guide on this foot, and just letting it go, making sure everything is nicely centered, and the machine / buttonholer just does its thing. Once all the buttonholes are sewn, it's time to get my buttonhole slicer and slice in between so I can create nice straight buttonholes. You could use fray check in here so they don't fray if you're using a fray fabric. Now, once all the buttonholes are cut, I am laying the shirt on a flat surface, lining up the plackets, and making sure the buttonholes are nice and even. What I am doing, if you can't see right here, is taking a pin, putting in the center of the buttonhole, opening the shirt slightly, and then marking with a chalk. Doing it this way gives me a great accurate guide for when I'm hand sewing on my buttons. Yes, I hand sew my buttons on. Once I have done the buttons, or at least the guide for them all the way down the shirt, this is what I'm left with. I have nice little crosses all the way down the shirt, so I know where to place my buttons. The last step in making the shirt is really to add the buttons, which I didn't film because who wants to see me sitting there sewing buttons on by hand? Not too many people. Although, if you would like to see that sort of video, please leave me a comment below. Now that the shirt is sewn, buttons are on, it's time to do a little fashion show. And there you have it. One birthday shirt I'm going out in. Now, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified when my next videos come out. If you have any comments, questions, please leave those below. If you like this sort of video, please, again, let me know. I'll try my best to accommodate. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoy this Series 3. Bye now. Have a good day. Happy sewing.